We're not on Facebook as yet, you know. Robert, we're not on Facebook yet. Would you?
Yeah, it'll take a second.
Hi, so how are you coping during this time of social distancing? Are you feeling bored, anxious, isolated, or just fearful? Well, you're not alone. Many people are going through those situations and having to cope with them. So today we're going to be talking with a very special guest about the ramifications of isolation during this time of social distancing. If you have any questions, please feel free to follow the thread on Facebook or YouTube. We're live here in Microbin Radio, and we're live on our streaming platform. Don't forget you can download a free app from the App Store or Google Play. My first guest is Dr. Guldal, and she is a psychologist, she is a healer, and she is a spiritual guide for many. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you so much. It's such a joy to be here.
It's wonderful having you also. So I am fascinated by this time and place that we're living in, right? Because it's unprecedented times. We're dealing with social anxiety, social distancing. We are a species that like to be able to interact with each other. And now we are forced to isolate ourselves. And my fear is that not only the short-term ramifications of feeling lonely or feeling anxious or feeling depressed, but the long-term ramifications we feel really fully don't know. From your perspective, how do you view all of this?
Worrying and wondering about. What I'd like to do is just before we get started is just take a moment to set the intention for us and the audience for receiving today what the spirit guides and the ancestors. I opened my bundle back there this morning in ceremony before we started and set the intention that everyone who's joining us now or later, that they receive in their hearts and their minds what they need in their highest and best good. And when there's an energetic process like the one we're going to start in, it's nice to set that intention that we're going to walk away with fun, enjoyment, entertainment, but most importantly, with something that we need, a seed of something.
That's good.
So I just wanted to kind of set that intention. With that said, we have two choices. We can either get lost in the fear of the unknown, or we can see the opportunity. You know, I heard somebody say, and I think, Michael, you and I, when we first chatted, Mother Nature has sent us to our room to see, so we can think about what we've done. It's a little like that. There have been plagues, there have been epidemics. We've had huge things throughout our history, war, battle, natural disasters. Humanity always survives.
Right.
We always survive. So that's really not the question, although many people are dying. We know people at the front lines, I'm on the front lines in a different way, that are in fear, that it's real. It's not that it isn't real. At the same time, for the first time ever, the world is addressing this from a humane perspective. Worrying about people more than economy, it's brand new.
Yes, but yet we're still very divided. I mean, politically divided, physically divided, and it's interesting. When I first remember that this was going to be our reality, I thought, well, for the first time in humanity's history, of my lifetime anyway, we're coming together as a world to fight this one thing, this one enemy, that is basically potentially able to destroy humanity. So it's a good thing because we're coming together, but yet socially distancing ourselves, physically distancing ourselves is certainly something that is a new phenomena. And for many people, it's uncomfortable. I talk to my friends in New York and I can hear the fear in their voices. I can hear the anxiety that manifest in their voices, and you know these people for years, so you know what you're talking about when you say you can feel their energy. So what can we give them in terms of tools? I mean, you and I come from a very different background in terms of spirituality and being able to meditate and set our intentions and calm our minds and bring us to a place of present, right? Being able to acknowledge whether it is fear we're feeling or anxiety or uncertainty or depression, and do what is necessary to bring us to a place of wholesomeness or more wholesomeness. Yeah. How can we help our friends without sounding so philosophical?
Well, if you're looking for specific key points, I think the first thing people need to understand is to find a way personally that they can make sense of this for their own personal lives. That's first, because as you said, there's a lot of division, and depending on what people are watching, what they're going to get caught up in. I spent a lot of time in New York. I was there at the very beginning of this. It's a whole different energy city anyway. Mm-hmm. So everyone's fears are based on their own personal experience of this. So the first tool is, how do I, each I that wants to do that, who am I? What matters to me? What are my values? And how do I use those things first to center and ground myself? And I think when we don't do, actually I know when we don't do that, the spinning really occurs. So across the board, the first thing we need to do, regardless of faith, regardless of non-faith, who am I as a person? Who am I as a family? What matters most to me? And how is that going to serve me now? That's the first thing, because when we ground in our own value, then we can function from there. But without that, we're all tumbleweeds. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the very first thing is to have a moment to ask that question. And many people forget that in the spin of watching everything.
And we're sort of caught up in a wave of following the news, and the news is not necessarily positive, uplifting information, and that can really affect us emotionally, right? It affects our response, it affects how we feel, and it carries us down a rabbit hole of of anxiety or whatever it might be. So I think the first thing, as you said, is to understand who you are, but the second thing is to recognize that you're feeling something that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, it spins out of control. So the recognition, from my perspective, is sort of like, because a lot of times we live very unconsciously. We feel things and we kind of ignore it. We go to social media or we go to things that make us happy, whether it's food or drink or conversation, and just put it on the back burner. But everything has consequences, correct? So therefore, whatever we're feeling, we need to figure out what that is and how do we best address it. So how do we recognize that emotion? From your perspective, what do you do when you're feeling, for example, uncertain or anxious? What are the triggers that brings you to that place of something is up here?
Okay, so as I've been working with people pretty much around the clock, the first thing, again, remember that knowledge is everything. Knowledge gives us information from which to work with. So anxiety is contagious, and people are having surges of anxiety like you're speaking about, right, and surges of fear, and they don't always belong to the person. They don't always belong to us. So I want to answer your question, but I think some data is helpful. Mm-hmm. Without information, the specific directions don't always make sense. Okay? So what we're having is we have a field of anxiety and a field of fear that's rushing through through Mother Earth, if you will. So the butterfly effect. We know that years ago, when a certain amount of people went and did a specific meditation and a mantra in Washington, D.C., crime rate dropped for 17%. Right now, we're all feeling on a regular basis these surges of fear and anxiety and uncertainty. It doesn't always belong to us. If we can understand that first, then back to that grounding. Who am I? Am I going to get swept up in this? Always take a deep breath. We stop breathing when we're anxious. We stop breathing. So first of all, like, take that deep breath, find your footing and say, this may not even be mine.
Mm-hmm.
Hold tight. What's most important here? Safety, compassion. When that anxiety or those fear surges come, whether somebody's looking at their financial statement or they've gotten on the scale and gained 10 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
they're just sitting with this surge,
Right.
the consciousness you speak about, the first thing is, who am I? And this may not be mine. I need to set my intention with my breath for
Right.
compassion. That is going to override the fear and anxiety. Everyone's in the same boat,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
basically.
Yes, but
Right?
we all
Everyone's in the
respond
same
differently.
fear.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
We all respond differently to it. That's the thing that really makes it so complex, is the fact that everyone sees the world from a different perspective, and therefore our interpretation of that which we see is different. So I may
Yeah.
respond to fear differently from Robert, who is my technical engineer, stressing
Yeah.
out over here about the technology. So let's
Right,
talk about.
absolutely.
Yes. So let's talk about solutions or tools. You know, you talk about breathing. You know, for me, breathing is like crucial. So often you forget to breathe, right? It's a logical function of the human body, but we really don't breathe properly. We breathe shallow breaths. We're anxious, we're nervous. It becomes even more shallow. So let's talk about the breathing aspect, because I think a lot of people think about that as hocus pocus or just not relevant, but I cannot stress enough how important it is to breathe, not just because of the fact that I have spent, over 25 years of my life running businesses that were stressful and anxious ridden and having to comport myself properly instead of falling apart in a meeting. So I know what breathing is like. So let's talk a little bit about that, and maybe you can give us some tools on how we can focus on breath and bring ourselves to the present moment and address whatever we're feeling. Yeah.
Absolutely. We don't not breathe on purpose. It's a physiological phenomenon, right? When the central nervous system acts up and we start having anxiety, fight or flight, breath gets shallower, glucose goes to the muscles, all of these physiological things happen. The way to physiologically change that is breath, because a quiet, slow breath cannot operate at the same time the central nervous system is in fight or flight. So it's like the light switch. So, from sympathetic arousal to parasympathetic quiet. So if we can remember that it's physiological and not something we've done wrong, oh, I forgot to breathe. No, it's not like that. But when we bring it into our consciousness and just say, again, find our feet and say, we do that 3 times, or squared breathing.
Tell me what that
about
means.
Squared breathing. So squared breathing is breathing in to the count of 4, holding to the count of 4, breathing out to the count of 4, pausing to the count of 4. A complete square. Do you want to try it?
Of course, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, so let's do it right now.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go.
Okay.
Breathe in.
Close our eyes or open our eyes?
Everybody close their eyes and
Okay.
breathe in. I'll count.
All right.
Close your eyes. Breathe.
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe out with your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now open your eyes.
Nice.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's fabulous.
So you do that 3 times. It overrides everything.
Right.
And it's a
right.
physiological thing. It's not hocus pocus or
Sure,
any of that. It's
sure.
pure physiology.
And the other thing that I forgot to mention is when you breathe in, expand the diaphragm and not breathe into your chest, because some people, when they breathe, it should be in the abdomen. So you expand the
That's right.
abdomen as
Fill
your
the
lung.
belly out.
Exactly, exactly. So that's very, very crucial when it
Let
comes to
it
good
in.
breathing techniques. Thank you for that. I think it's a key that everyone can use in a very short
Families.
period of time.
Absolutely. I've been telling families to do that together twice a day,
Very nice.
to just sit down together and do together.
Very nice. So let's talk about situations where people are feeling isolated. There's a lot of loneliness out there. There's a lot of boredom out there. People who don't really enjoy being with themselves for more than 5 minutes. I'm guilty of that sometimes. I'm not saying I'm better than any other, but I'm just saying, how do you deal with isolation and loneliness? Because it's a very common factor that I hear from friends and family members. Oh, I'm bored.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm lonely. So,
Or I want physical touch. It's a little bit of an introvert's dream and an extrovert's nightmare.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We have, for the first time ever, this opportunity of technology. So people are able to connect with each other, but that physical presence is what's missing because we're connecting constantly. So the isolation is twofold. One is the inability to go do what one's used to doing, whatever that may be. Go to the coffee shop, meet a friend for dinner. That human connection is something that, if I may take just a moment, we thought that we needed. We thought technology was enough. We thought texting was enough, but now people are calling each other again. So what can we do is we can remember to call. We can remember to do visual. What else we can do is not drink so much. Liquor sales 55%. That's pretty significant. And then what happens are people spin into despair with too much drinking, right? Those people that are feeling the most isolated, it becomes really important if they choose to see this as an opportunity for personal growth. There's nothing we can do. We're isolated. We can fight it, we can kick it, or we can go into a place of surrender. When you hear your friends, Michael, say, oh my God, I can't stand it, the gift you give them is say, hey, bud, I'm right here. We're talking.
Right, right,
Here.
right.
Right. And then to not let that sit, that's the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
That's the rabbit hole. Then everything that was ever bad happened. Remember this, remember that. We can't come out. But by choice, we can say, I have people that love me, but I can use this to take care of the shadow. Use this opportunity to take care of those thoughts that annoy me through the night, that
Yeah.
get in the way of my joy.
So let's talk about taking care of the thoughts. Um,
Yeah.
it is a project in of itself. The thoughts are oftentimes overwhelming. Our minds are like spoiled children, right? The mind just goes on and on and on with rabbit holes of thought patterns that oftentimes spiral into even more confusion. How do you manage that?
There are a number of ways depending on who the person is. So using specific frequencies in the background. So YouTube has a lot of different sounds. It could be Native American drumming, solfeggio frequencies, different meditation apps that have sounds. Because sound will change the brain physiology. So if you're going to clean your refrigerator again, people are doing a lot of cleaning. So you can have these sounds in the background. Not everybody wants to sit still or meditate, right?
Right.
So you can use sounds. You can choose a word or a sound that represents divinity to you. It could be Om, it could be Om, it could be Jesus, it could be Father, it could be Universe, Creator. Yeah. Find a word, because all of those words carry a certain potency of sound in the brain. They have an ah or an in them. And just say the word over and over again. Gaia, Gaia, ah. What happens is the entire brain lights up with serotonin and dopamine and endorphins.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. It's sort of like the same thing that happens when you exercise as well, right? Because your body is going through a series of strenuous or non-strenuous postures or asanas if it's yoga. And as you do that, you're releasing stress. You're giving your brain lots of happy, little enzymes going there. So it seems as if, from what you're saying, the chanting of certain sounds breaks the cycle and creates happy thoughts and feelings going to the body and the mind. That's really interesting.
It really rewires the brain.
Yes.
So we have a bunch of science we could talk about, but we do know that those sounds rewire the brain and slow down negative thinking. We have 30 to 50 thoughts a minute. About 85% are negative. That's
fascinating.
A lot.
Yes, that's a lot.
Our entire system.
Yes. I've actually.
Or sing a song, sing rock and roll.
Or listen, dance. I mean, put on some music and dance, because that makes me happy for sure. There are a lot of things that I personally do that that breaks the cycle. I journal quite a bit. I believe that meditation, yoga is important, because for me it's part of grounding and centering myself. Sometimes I don't sleep well enough at nights when I should, because of insomnia or whatever, but yoga helps. Meditation helps. So these things bring me back to the present, bring me back to a place of awareness or presence. I go to the gym, and that helps too, but the gym is closed and yoga studios are closed. What was that?
You can't go down.
No, exactly. So being able to
how to do that at home, right?
Exactly. You have to be mindful of, okay, how can I use this time and manipulate certain types of exercises to help me? And that's one of the things that I really love about yoga, is the fact that I'm not at the gym, but it certainly keeps me mentally and physically fit. And I think I'm going to do a show about that in future, and maybe you can join the conversation and we'll talk more about that, because I think it's a great show in of itself. Yes, indeed.
Because it unites the brain and the body. So if we stay with those thoughts, but it's not for everybody. So for those that aren't comfortable with that, then what we can do is remember compassion. Intention, prayer. What do I want to be? We put that into our heart, not here. Our heart. So we can work out with that intention in our heart. We can dance, we can move, we can stretch, we can lay down. But if we keep that desire in our heart, it changes, just like yoga and meditation. It's different. It's the way that humans want to be. Think about it. If the whole universe right now, the whole globe right now is focused on compassion. If anxiety is contagious and we're all having surges of anxiety, what if more people were centering in any of these ways,
right,
and breathing compassion? What do you think is going to happen?
I think we'll be a lot more happy and centered and a lot more peaceful. I mean, the reality is that we're not peaceful because we're not comfortable in ourselves. We're constantly vibrating at a different frequency outside of ourselves, and it's the ability to bring ourselves back to center. That's why you mentioned the sound vibration and the physical exercises. These are things that helps us bring the mind and body back into alignment with
You know
our
what else?
Yes. Coloring. Oh, well, as in painting?
Color.
That's nice.
Painting, crayons. Why
Very nice.
just sit and color? Let your subconscious just draw something, draw something.
That's
Sit
fantastic.
around as a family, or if you're by yourself, it's meditative.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm sitting
Yeah.
here and I'm looking at the beautiful view behind you, and I'm very curious, as I'm sure our guests and our friends are as well. So tell me a little bit about what you have on the table behind you.
This is, as a medicine person and as a spiritual teacher, it's important to have a bundle that carries the energetic medicine. So, in the traditional way, before any healing is to occur or teaching, because they're the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
the bundle is opened. The medicine that's in there is for the specific purpose of the day. And then each item is prayed over and asked to bring their energetic medicine to the ceremony. So there's my teacher, Chief.
Yes.
He's very, very powerful. I have my sage, my flute, my rattle for the darkness,
Yes. Yes.
right? Here's my pipe. And there is a medicine wheel here. I won't be able to see, but it's actually made with a rosary
Ah.
that
Okay.
was blessed by a monk in Trinidad years ago.
Oh. Okay.
So the premise is that every single thing has energy and a life. And when we remember that, every breath we take, every sound we listen to, everything we choose to do from our grounded space will carry the energy that's in our heart. So when I said earlier, it's time for us, Mother Nature has given us this opportunity to change our consciousness.
Right.
It's about that. Am I going to spin in the darkness of fear? Am I going to know that the mystics have always said there will be a time when human consciousness will be elevated? This is that time. This is why we're where we are right now, to remember that others matter. So every single thing in this bundle, including my beads right here that I've been holding, is from India, blessed by my guru. Everything holds the energy of that love and that intention. Have you ever seen the images of Emoto's water?
Yes. Yes. Of course.
Right? So somebody thinks a thought and the water crystals change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
You say Hitler, you have this darkness in the water, and you say Mother Mary, and you can feel grace in the water.
Yes, yes, yes. It's beautiful. Dr. Goldal, I thank you so much for being with me. We're running out of time, and I'd love to have you back. We'll talk more about spirituality and healing and psychology and how we can all work together towards making sure that we're on a path towards being more wholesome, right? So thank you for joining me. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Real pleasure.
My pleasure. Namaste. And until next time, I'm Michael Robinson. Remember, this is your time. Use it wisely.